organized a special birthday trip with my son and friendly ex-husband, only to find his girlfriend was tagged along instead. My ex-husband and I divorced when our son was just 7 years old. Now, our boy is 15, 16 in only a few months, and, somehow, things between my ex and me evolved in ways I never saw coming. We went from divorced and done to actually being friends. Not just tolerating each other for our son's sake, but genuinely enjoying each other's company. Sometimes we even hang out just because we want to, not just for parental duties. Oddly, we get along so much better now than when we were married. I'd never have predicted this outcome, but it worked out better than I could have hoped. Things started to shift again when my ex began seeing someone. At first it didn't seem serious, but over time it became obvious that this woman was becoming a bigger part of his life. I've met her enough times to be cordial, but we're not close. My son is around her far more than I am, and from everything I hear, he likes her. A lot. He tells me how nice she is, how fun, how she makes his dad happy. That's where something started gnawing inside me. It genuinely embarrasses me to admit how much it bothers me. I'm ashamed to even say the word jealous, but that's exactly how I felt when my son told me these things. I put on the expected smile, said all the right supportive things, but inside I felt a sting I just didn't expect. Why did it get under my skin so much to hear that she's so good to them both? What's made it harder is that she isn't thrilled about my ex and me being friends beyond co-parenting. She's polite, but she's made it clear, it's okay for us to talk about our son, but hanging out just for fun? That's a no. Suddenly, I can feel my ex quietly recalibrating the boundaries between us. He doesn't say it outright, but I can tell he's tiptoeing to keep the peace in his new relationship, adjusting our friendship to make things easier with her. It hurts in ways I never anticipated. Then came the real kicker. Several months ago, my ex and I planned a trip for our son's 16th birthday. Just us, his parents, and him. The whole idea was to do something he's obsessed with, a shared adventure, a family-ish milestone for a kid almost grown. It wasn't about nostalgia, it was about showing him we're always a team when it comes to him. And then, just the other day, my son casually mentioned that his dad's girlfriend was coming along too. My stomach dropped. She doesn't even care for the activity, she's just going to be there. And I didn't even find out from my ex, I found out from my son. That part felt like a slap. This trip, this tiny sacred space carved out for the three of us, suddenly wasn't ours anymore. I haven't even brought it up with my ex, because I don't know how to say any of this without sounding petty or possessive. The last thing I want to be is the crazy ex-wife who can't move on. But underneath all my good intentions, I feel so sad and helpless. It's not just about losing my friendship with him, it's like an entire chapter of my life, and the dynamic we fought so hard to build, is slipping away, something that used to be ours, now slowly being overwritten. I worked incredibly hard to be mature about our divorce, about co-parenting, about blending new people into our son's life. I want to be supportive, steady, and positive for my son's sake, but right now, even that feels like a struggle. I keep wondering, how do I deal with these feelings without making things weird or undoing all our progress? How do I set respectful boundaries, or even know if I should, without causing a mess and looking like exactly what I'm terrified of becoming? Update 1. At the beginning of June, a storm of complicated feelings hit me, my son, my ex-husband, his new girlfriend, each piece of that puzzle making me feel like I was navigating a maze blindfolded. I heard again and again that I needed therapy. People nudged me to dig deeper, to unpack what was really going on inside my head. The idea made sense, even if I'm not sure I'm ready to leap into it just yet. Maybe not today, maybe not this month. But I haven't ruled it out. So much of this just feels like territory I need to cross on my own 2 feet, but I couldn't leave things swirling in my head, so I just asked my ex-husband directly about the whole concert birthday trip situation, which had me on edge. Our son had let slip that his girlfriend was now part of the trip, and I needed some clarity to sort out hotel logistics. I made sure to keep my tone neutral, non-confrontational, even though, truthfully, the idea of her being there made me seethe. He came clean. He hadn't told me because he was hoping she'd back out, and, it turned out, he'd rather she didn't come either. He admitted it would be awkward, that she'd all but demanded an invitation, making it clear she expected to be brought along. He said he couldn't say no without it hurting their new relationship. "You think I want to go on a trip with both of you?" He joked. Trying to be the adult, I suggested maybe I should just give her my concert ticket and buy a separate one. I could avoid sitting near them, and she wouldn't be left out at the hotel. Or maybe I should just take our son to a completely different concert date. Deep down, both options made me angry, but I said them out loud anyway, maybe just to see his reaction. His answer was immediate, absolutely not. There was no way I was giving up my ticket or sitting separately. He insisted I shouldn't back out. We'd been planning this trip for nearly a year. We did agree, however, to cancel the shared hotel room and book separate ones, at least that would ease some of the tension. I didn't even mention that his girlfriend isn't thrilled about us spending so much time together. That's her right, I suppose. Most people would feel uneasy if their partner was close to an ex, especially when children are involved. It's uncomfortable, but I get it. I'll just have to deal with my feelings. The hardest part, what truly haunts me, is how reflexively I still text or reach for the phone to talk to him. 20 years. For over 2 decades, he's been my confidant, my best friend, someone I could talk to about anything, not just our son. Before anyone jumps to accuse me of being the obsessive ex, he's called me his best friend, too. The truth is, other friendships have faded, 2 close girlfriends, many years ago, but those bonds are long gone for reasons I can't even bear to pick apart. Now. Since then, I haven't found that kind of deep connection with another woman. I have friends, sure, but not friends like that. My ex-husband is the one person I can truly be myself around. That makes it complicated. I don't want him back, not romantically, but I still feel like he's mine in some way, not possessive, not malicious, just that I never adjusted to him having a life wholly separate from mine. It's like he's still a character in my story, not someone fully outside of my narrative. I'm trying, really trying, to do the right thing, to get to know his girlfriend a little, but not overstep. I don't want to become best friends with her. That would feel too strange for me, like stepping over a line I can't even see. Just today, I was over at his house to pick up my dog, really, my son's dog. I had a work event, so the dog stayed the night with them. She was there, too, even though they don't live together yet. We were out back playing with the dogs in the splash pad, killing time, when suddenly he called out, "Top 5 albums of all time, go." Soon we were bickering back and forth, laughing about our different tastes, albums, then guitarists, then everything else. These are the moments where we click, where I remember why we were friends for so long. I realized she was left out, she doesn't care about these things, couldn't join the conversation. I tried to steer things to a more neutral topic, but small talk has never been my strong suit. The awkwardness was palpable, so I excused myself and left. Now I'm left with one burning question: how do I start detaching, emotionally, from the person who has been my closest friend for so long, especially when we have to co-parent and interact so often? How do I let go, when I never truly detached after we divorced, even though I told myself I had? This is the ache I carry as I try to move forward. Update 2. Somewhere along the winding road of these last 8 years, since I divorced my ex-husband, a quiet transformation happened between us. Our son is about to turn 16, a number that feels both impossibly old and impossibly young. I suppose, somewhere in the shuffle between court orders and awkward drop-offs, we stopped being just co-parents and somehow became real friends again. Real best friends, even, the sort who send each other brainless memes at midnight just because we know exactly what will make the other person laugh. We know everything about each other, every weird trigger, every secret habit. Technically, we haven't been together for longer than some marriages last, but if I'm honest, I never quite untangled myself from seeing him as my person. Detaching never felt possible. And now there's someone new. His girlfriend. Sure, we've both dated other people since the divorce. But I've never slid into anything serious. Partly, I suppose, because I like my space. Mostly, though, I just haven't found anyone who ignites the kind of chemistry I had with him, even with all the frequent explosions that chemistry brought. This new girlfriend of his feels different, though. She's the most serious partner either of us has had since the split, and I can see she finds all this closeness between us uncomfortable. I don't blame her. If I stood in her shoes, I'd probably feel exactly the same. She isn't dramatic or cruel, if anything, she's careful to the point of delicacy. There's a background soundtrack always playing with us too. Music. I have been hopelessly in love with Oasis since I was a teenager. My ex is just as obsessed. We're both the kind of nerd-level, obsessive music fans who dissect albums into atoms and bond over every lyric and riff. When our son fell for music too, Oasis being his favorite, that cemented it. So for his 16th birthday, we're going to see Oasis for the first time in 16 years. The three of us, together. It's a once-in-a-lifetime show, and my son is nearly bursting with excitement. But here's the wrench: his girlfriend, who is decidedly not a music person, has decided she's coming on the trip too. I never agreed, but it's just happening. I hate the idea that I'll have to walk on eggshells, reel myself in, or explain old inside jokes. But I swallowed my irritation and resolved to move past it, because that's what grown-ups do. Right? She even reached out to me recently, sending a message that was polite, maybe even warm, though there was steel in it. She said she wanted to clear the air and that she hopes we can all be comfortable together, but she needs a little more space, especially when we're together. I tried to respect that. I kept my distance, bit back the urge to text him, even though he's still the first person I want to message when anything hilarious, ridiculous, or tragic happens. I'm actively trying to unlearn the reflex, and yeah, it hurts, the kind of hurt that reminds you you're still tethered to something you probably should have cut away a long time ago. But I know it's necessary. I rely on him too much. The thing is, he keeps texting me, never anything inappropriate, just inside jokes, observations, music recommendations. Friendly. Safe. But it still makes me feel like I'm doing something wrong. Then Oasis, finally, after 16 years, live streamed their first gig. My son was at his dad's house. I got a message from him, they're live streaming it, and just like that, the electricity was back. The three of us, in a group chat, firing off videos, memes, and setlist predictions. It felt like being 17 again, tumbling down a musical rabbit hole together, all laughing and yelling and completely caught up in the moment. In that rush, I went wild online and bought several $100s of Oasis merch for my son and myself, not even pausing to feel guilty. I didn't buy anything for my ex. Boundaries, right? Boundaries. Turns out, while we were losing our minds virtually, his girlfriend had invited him out to a 4th of July party. He'd refused, wanting to stay home to watch the concert. We both hate fireworks, anyway. But she kept pushing. Who was he texting with such intensity? He didn't answer. She snatched his phone, saw it was me, and flung it across the room before storming out. I didn't witness any of this. My son did, and that's how I found out. And it's my son who keeps pulling me back down to solid ground. He's the reason I've so diligently kept the peace, the reason we ever managed to preserve this weirdly functional friendship. In a way, he's why we got divorced. We realized we'd break him if we stayed together, with all our bitter, ridiculous fighting. His peace has always been worth swallowing my pride, biting my tongue, and being the bigger person, no matter how hard it was. Now I find myself searching for tickets to other Oasis shows in other cities. If I can just snag a pair, maybe my son and I will have a birthday adventure, just the two of us, no ex-husband, no girlfriend, but I'll still go to the show we planned together. I'll see it through. And here's the ugly truth, knowing I contributed to this moment, that I'm part of what made her throw his phone and storm out, fills me with a secret, guilty joy. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't pleased. I'd be positively thrilled, except for the nagging awareness that my son was caught in the fallout, and he deserves adults who can control themselves. I keep considering reaching out to her, wanting to explain that nothing inappropriate happened, but I just don't. Underneath it all, I'm honest enough to admit I still want to win, but I can't even say what winning means anymore. Update 3. We went. I thought the week before would drag, but it didn't. It folded in on itself like paper, and then I was standing in a stadium with a wristband biting my skin and the hum of 100,000 people vibrating through my ribs. My son was all jittery legs and too big grin, trying to act cool, failing beautifully. My ex looked like a teenager again, which isn't fair, and his girlfriend showed up in sensible sneakers and a windbreaker, looking exactly like someone who had prepared for noise while not wanting to be there for the reason behind it. We'd agreed on separate hotels. It helped. We met up outside the gates because our seats were together, and there was a weird moment right after the ticket scanner beeped when the crowd surged and we all reached instinctively for my son at the same time. 4 hands, 1 kid, a simultaneous protective reflex that made something in my throat ache. She stepped back first. "You two take him," she said, not unkindly. "I'll catch up." Inside, it smelled like old beer and stadium pretzels and plastic ponchos. My son dragged us to the merch table and I told him he could pick 1 thing and then immediately bought 2 because I have no backbone. The line was long enough that it created a forced détente. Somehow it ended up being me and her shoulder to shoulder, shuffling forward an inch at a time while the guys and my son went to scout our seats. She broke first. "I shouldn't have thrown his phone," she said, eyes on the back of a stranger's Oasis hoodie. I was embarrassed 5 minutes later and then humiliated that I cared. I don't know how to be around this. I didn't pretend not to know what this meant. Our shorthand, our history, the way my ex and I can pick up the same thread from 3 different angles like we never stopped talking. The way my son and I both know it so well we move through it on autopilot. "I'm not doing it to hurt you," I told her, and it came out small. "I don't always realize I am doing it." She nodded. "I know. That's the problem." By the time we found our row the lights had gone down, the opening chord hit and it was a gut punch, like being ejected from a slingshot straight back into my own adolescence. My son grabbed my hand with one and reached for his dad with the other and for a second we were a chain. I don't remember which song broke me first. Maybe it was Slide Away, maybe Live Forever. It's a blur of lights and bad singing and the warm, shaking laugh that happens when crying is too obvious. Somewhere in there, I felt someone press something into my free hand and looked down. It was her, tucking a set of foam earplugs into my palm, the kind I forgot to bring but always need. "You get the tinnitus tomorrow," she said over the roar, "you'll hate all of us." I mouthed, "Thank you." She nodded once like a general who'd made a strategic compromise. At "Don't Look Back" in anger, the stadium turned into a choir. Everybody swayed. My son, who pretends he's immune to sentiment, crushed our fingers hard enough to leave little half-moon marks. He cried. It was ridiculous and perfect. When the confetti cannons finally coughed out their last breath and the house lights came up, he spun around and said, "Best night of my life," with the pure sincerity of someone who hasn't yet started qualifying everything. I wanted to bottle it. After, because adrenaline needs somewhere to go, we all ended up at a diner that looked like it was built in 1972 and never updated. We slid into a booth and pretended tiredness wasn't creeping in around the edges. She poured us all water from the pitcher like she had appointed herself the one sober person in the room. The conversation was lighter than it had any right to be, something about how my son wants to learn Champagne Supernova on guitar, a debate about whether the fries tasted like actual potatoes, the weirdness of being sticky with soda foam without having touched the soda. At some point my ex and I started to slip into that old, elastic rhythm and I felt the rubber band in me snap awake and stretch. I reined it back hard. He noticed. He did, because he's him. His face gentled in that familiar way. He shifted, even, like he could turn the dial down on himself. It made me want to both hug him and throw a salt shaker through the plate glass window. In the parking lot, with the lot lights making everything look like a scene from a detective show, my son went ahead to take a dumb picture next to a tour bus that was definitely not theirs. She hung back. "I need something," she said, to both of us, not looking at either of us directly. "Not a promise. A change." My ex braced almost imperceptibly, which is how I knew he'd been waiting for this exact sentence. "Okay," I said. It surprised me how easy the word felt coming out. "I can do your co-parenting," she said. "I can do birthdays and school forms and even this." She gestured back toward the stadium. "But I can't be the extra microphone for a conversation I'm not part of, standing sleep-deprived in a kitchen while you guys do your midnight show. I'm not asking for you to stop being good parents. I'm asking for space where I can exist without feeling like a trespasser." My ex looked at me in a way that said, "Are you going to make me choose?" I didn't want to be that person. "We can pull it back," I said. "No more middle-of-the-night nonsense. I'll text you about our son, and if it's not about him, I'll sit on it until morning or I won't send it at all." It physically hurt to say. Like prying something out of my own teeth. He exhaled. "I should have managed this better," he told her, then me. "I'm sorry." We were suddenly three adults having an adult conversation in a cracked asphalt lot at 12:47 a.m., my son in the distance taking a smug picture of himself reflected in a tour bus that kept telling him with repeated signage to not touch the tour bus. Later, at my hotel door, my ex lingered like a ghost of older nights. He didn't try to come in. He didn't even lean into the frame. "I don't want to lose my friend," he said, quiet and direct because he knows I can't stand euphemism, "but I can't keep doing it like this. I want to make this work with her." There was the tiniest shake in his voice and I hated how much that lived inside my chest for hours after. "I know," I said. Which did not mean I liked it even a little. The next morning, over bleary coffee and a bagel my son mangled into a shape that no longer resembled food, I told him the truth in the way you can tell a teenager the truth without giving him burdens he didn't ask for. That things were going to change a little. That is dad and I needed to be better about boundaries. He shrugged like it was obvious. "Honestly," he said, tearing his bagel into meteorites, "I'd like fewer grown-up vibes and more just music and dogs." I snorted coffee into my elbow. Fair. I didn't plan to tell my ex about the second set of tickets, but my son has a mouth that outruns its governor when he's thrilled. He blurted it out at the curb during goodbye hugs. "She got Chicago," he yelled, practically vibrating. My ex's face did a quick, fast flicker of something that looked like hurt and then landed on something steadier. Before I could start apologizing for hijacking what was supposed to be a shared first, his girlfriend cut in. "That's great," she said, and it was not performative. "You should have your thing." She put a hand on my son's shoulder and looked at me. "And I won't come." "That's yours." "Really?" My son nodded, relieved in a way he probably didn't even know he was. On the plane home, while my son slept with his mouth open like a cartoon character, I went through my phone and did something ceremonial and small. I renamed my ex from the private, stupid nickname he's had in there since 2004 to just his first name. It felt like dropping an anchor into the bottom of a lake. The phone buzzed almost immediately, as if summoned. A photo. It was the shot from last night, the three of us, backs to the camera, arms crooked around my son's shoulders under a curtain of lights and confetti. The angle was perfect in the way candid kindness sometimes is. He texted, she took it. I texted back, "Tell her thank you." Then I put the entire thread on Do Not Disturb and cried into an airport napkin while a stranger next to me pretended they didn't see. 2 days later, a package arrived that had me swearing never to pay for rush shipping again and then immediately grateful that I had. The Chicago tickets were real. My son and I leave in 3 weeks for a quick there and back, just the two of us. He's planning our breakfast with the fervor of a Michelin critic. I bought us ridiculous matching shirts we will absolutely regret in future photos. I didn't tell my ex until after I'd forwarded him all the flight info for the original trip expenses and summer sports schedules, like an adult putting their house in order before a storm. The last new thing is the one that feels the strangest to say. I booked a therapist. First session is on a Wednesday at 9 a.m., and I've already invented 5 reasons to cancel and argued myself out of each one. I told my son I have a morning appointment. He nodded and asked if he could use the good headphones while I'm out. This is maybe what detaching looks like, unglamorous and rote, putting your ex at arm's length not because you hate him or because you want to win, but because you finally believe that you're allowed to build a little private country inside yourself where you don't need him to translate the language. We're not fixed. We're not broken. We're pivoting. In the middle of the night, I still start to screenshot a meme I know will make him laugh and then I don't. Sometimes I write the text and delete it like a teenager with a crush. Sometimes I send nothing and put my phone face down and go lay on the floor with the dog. It feels both anticlimactic and like moving a mountain with a spoon. For what it's worth, his girlfriend texted me once, 2 days after the show. "Thank you for the earplugs," I wrote. "Thank you for the picture," I added. She sent back, "He's a good dad. You're a good mom." That's allowed. It didn't feel like surrender. It felt like someone opening a window in a room that had gotten too hot. And then I did the wildest, most boring thing I could manage. I left it at that. Update 4. I didn't cancel. Wednesday at 9 a.m. came on cat feed and then snarled in my face. The waiting room had a gurgling counter-sized fountain that made me need to pee and a sad little stack of coloring books for someone else's kid. The therapist wore soft, quiet shoes and didn't blink in a way that felt like a trap. I spent exactly 3 minutes trying to be charming and then immediately cried when she asked, "What do you want your mornings to feel like?" Not what do you want out of life, not tell me about your childhood, just mornings. It knocked me sideways. I said, "I don't know," and then, because my mouth betrays me when I'm flustered, less like a fire drill. We sat with it. She pushed a heavy glass of water toward me and said nothing in a way that made the room a little wider. I didn't say my ex until halfway through. I called him by his first name out loud and it felt weird, like wearing somebody else's coat on purpose. I left with mascara in new locations and a note in my phone that just said, "Stop rehearsing other people's lines." Then Chicago. Our flight got punted by a thunderstorm with a personality disorder. The departure board at the gate flickered between delayed and now boarding the way a teenager tells you they're ready 5 different times. My son pretended to be unbothered and then scrolled weather radar with the focus of a hurricane chaser. We ate pretzels with that grainy fake mustard and he said, "If we miss it, we'll just drive all night," and the way he said we made a square of warmth slide in under my ribs. We didn't miss it. We white-knuckled a takeoff through gray soup and landed in a city that smelled like warm stone and onions. He got us on the train into town and rolled his eyes when I kept pointing out buildings like I was auditioning to be a tour guide. Our hotel was one of those business ones with thirsty carpet and a window that pretends it opens. He flopped on the bed and announced he was starving. We walked to a place that served pizza slices bigger than our faces and I let him order the drink with the most sugar in America out of sheer superstition. Don't mess with joy if it's in the room. The show itself, I don't even know where to put it. It wasn't better than the first one, exactly. It was its own weather system. Our seats were weirdly good for what I'd paid, and an usher with forearms like Greek columns took pity on us when a support beam ate half our sightline and waved us a row closer with a conspiratorial little chin flick. There was a guy behind us who smelled like a cologne called Divorce Dad and sang one full song off key so loudly my son pressed his lips together, trying not to lose it. We went hoarse. It rained a little inside somehow, just the mist of bodies and beer, and every time a chorus cracked open, my son found my hand without looking. Once, mid-verse, he tilted his forehead against my shoulder for exactly 6 seconds and then pretended it hadn't happened, which I respected so completely that I would have signed a legal document swearing I didn't notice. My phone stayed in my bag almost the whole night. When it buzzed, I let it. I didn't narrate in my head what he might be saying, which felt new and like standing at the edge of a lake without checking how cold the water will be. On the train back after, 2 teenagers in front of us argued passionately about which song is for posers, and my son leaned in and said, dead serious, "It's always the one that got too big," and I had to look away so he wouldn't see me grin like a fool. At the hotel, he peeled off his soaked shirt and stood in the bathroom mirror counting confetti freckles on his shoulder like they were constellations. He pocketed 2, said, "For later," and then fell asleep sideways across the bed, one sock still on. We flew home early the next morning in that ugly slice of day that looks like an old bruise. He fell asleep before the wheels left the ground with his mouth open in a way that felt like a throwback to car seat days. When my phone finally came out, there was one text from his dad, sent at a normal hour, asking only if we'd landed. I typed, "On our way," and didn't add a single extra word, which felt like holding a kite in wind and choosing not to let it go. At my house, a small padded envelope was waiting in the mailbox, no return address I recognized. Inside, a multi-pack of the exact foam earplugs she'd pressed into my palm at the first show, and a post-it with her tidy handwriting. For next time, no tinnitus, E. I propped them on the key bowl like a talisman and resisted the urge to send a 6-sentence thank you and just took a picture and texted back, "Appreciated." My son asked if we could keep the package. "It's kind of part of the story now," he said, as if he's been ghostwriting this whole thing with me. 2 days later my ex asked if I could stop by for 10 minutes for scheduling and my brain tried that old trick where 10 minutes is code for something messy. I almost said no. I said yes. His kitchen looked the way it always looks, cleaner than mine. The dog hair swept into a neat little ghost on the baseboard like it had agreed to be tidy until Tuesday. E was there, too, barefoot, holding a handful of basil that made the whole place smell like summer. "We're moving in together in September," he said, and for once I didn't have to hear it secondhand from our son or find it out because a toothbrush appeared in a photo background. He looked at me like he was bracing anyway, and I hated that I'd taught him to brace. I said, "Thank you for telling me," and it came out like an actual thank you instead of the brittle version. E watched my face like someone watching the ocean for the first sign of a wave, and when none came, she set the basil down and said, "We want to make sure the transitions are smooth for him." Him meaning my son. "We're thinking Sunday nights over here starting in October, so Mondays aren't chaos." It should have hurt more than it did. What it felt like was a book being closed gently with a finger still inside to keep the place. I nodded. We spent 9 whole minutes talking about carpool and who was buying which size cleats, and no one made a joke to make the air easier to breathe. When I left, the dog followed me to the gate and then leaned his whole warm weight against my shins before jogging back to her. The next new thing landed in my lap in a DMV parking lot. My son took his driving test in a drizzle that turned the world into a gray sweater. I paced and called myself a cliché and then pretended I was fine when the examiner came back with that inscrutable clipboard. He passed. He grinned into his own mother like he was 5 again and then peeled himself off me in horror, remembering he was a person with dignity. He drove us home with both hands at 10 and 2 like an old man, turned off the car in my driveway and said, "I think this is the first real grown-up thing I did." It hit me in the sternum. He took the dog to his dad's after, alone, shoulders set in this new way, and I stood in my own quiet kitchen listening to the house sound like itself for the first time in years. It wasn't empty. It was precise. There were small, sharp, stupid temptations in all of this. A meme about bands and aging and knee pain that I almost sent at midnight. A picture of a weird thrift store lamp I knew he'd roast. I typed out, "Tell him we're proud," when our son texted he'd parallel park like a champion at E's house, and then I deleted we and put I am. It looked lonely on the screen and it was also right. On his actual birthday we did cake at his dad's, messy frosting and a lopsided number 16 candle. There were grandparents on FaceTime screens and a dog wearing a bandana he'd refused to take off for too long. E slid a flat square across the table wrapped in plain brown paper. He tore it open and there was a vintage vinyl of the first album he really fell in love with, not Oasis, the other one he plays to death, with a note in careful block letters on the sleeve, for turning the volume up when it matters. He went quiet for a second in that way he does when emotion sneaks up and then said, "This is sick," in the holy tone of someone baptized. Later we took a picture on the porch steps, him in the middle again, like we were bracketing a paragraph, and he took two, just to be sure. I caught her eye when she handed me back my phone and she made a face that was almost a smile and almost a truce. It looked good on her. I don't have a ribbon to tie around any of it. It's just a string of ordinary wild moments, crying in front of a stranger because she asked about mornings, the heavy, ridiculous flight out of a thunderstorm and into a night loud enough to rattle loose a stubborn ache, a padded envelope with earplugs, basil in someone else's hands, my kid, white-knuckling the steering wheel like he's holding his own life in place and, for the first time, kind of is. I don't know if this counts as growth or just forward motion disguised as getting through the week. I do know that when I got home today there was confetti still in the side pocket of my tote bag, 2 bright paper commas. I left them there on purpose. A small pause. Not an ending.